shared her final meal on Christmas Eve. By morning, a alpha king stood outside. Snowflakes danced like tiny silver stars, settling on the rooftops and gathering in drifts along the cobblestones. Smoke rose from chimneys in lazy spirals, filling the air with the scent of burning pine and wood. Despite the cold, the village seemed alive, as if every home contained a flickering warmth, a secret that winter could not touch. In a small cottage at the edge of the village, Alara moved quietly. Her fingers, slender and nimble, worked swiftly over the wooden table, arranging what would be their Christmas Eve meal. It was simple: bread, roasted vegetables, a small piece of cheese, but each item was placed with care, as if by arranging them perfectly she could summon a little magic into the ordinary evening. Her mother lay in the corner bed, covered in a faded quilt, her breath shallow and uneven. Alara's heart tightened as she looked at her. She had always been the strong one, the one to care and to protect, and yet tonight she felt the weight of helplessness pressing down on her chest. "Eat, mother," she said softly, placing a steaming bowl before her. "It's Christmas Eve. You must have something warm inside you." Her mother's pale lips curved into a faint smile. "You have always been too kind, Alara. I think you carry the warmth of 100 hearts in yours." Alara shook her head. "It's nothing, mother. I want us to have this night." The wind outside rattled the windows, and for a moment the cottage seemed to shrink beneath the cold. The snow pressed against the glass as if it were alive, seeking entrance. Alara pulled her shawl tighter and tried to ignore the uneasy feeling that had settled over her. She had lived all her life near the edge of the forest, and she knew better than most that darkness often came where it was least expected. She hummed quietly to herself as she placed the last candle on the table, lighting it with a trembling hand. The small flame flickered, casting golden shadows across the room. She wanted to believe that light could push the shadows away, even if just for one night. The meal was humble, but they ate together, and for a little while the chill outside seemed distant, a story told by the wind and snow. Alara poured them each a cup of hot cider, the steam curling into the air and warming the room with its sweet scent. "Do you remember the Christmas before the fire?" her mother asked suddenly, her voice weak but filled with a strange warmth. When he carved the tree out of wood himself." Alara's heart ached at the memory. Her father had died when she was still young, leaving behind only stories and a house full of memories. "Yes," she said softly, "I remember. He was strong, brave, and kind," her mother added. "Like you." Alara looked away, biting her lip. She did not know if she could ever live up to that kind of memory. She wanted to, of course. She wanted to be brave, to be enough. But the cold had a way of seeping into the heart, and tonight it was deep inside her. After the meal, she cleared the dishes and sat by the fire, her hands wrapped around the mug of cider, letting the warmth spread through her. The flames danced in the hearth, reflecting in her eyes, and for a moment she felt the presence of something beyond the ordinary world, something watching from the edges of the forest. It was not unusual for Alara to feel strange things. The forest had always been alive with whispers, shadows that moved just out of sight, and a cold, unseen gaze that followed her steps whenever she walked near the trees. She had grown used to it, accepted it as part of her life. But tonight was different. Tonight the wind carried a voice she could not place, soft as a sigh yet urgent, almost commanding. She shivered, unsure if it was only her imagination. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Only silence answered, and the fire crackled as if trying to reassure her. She rose to close the shutters, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The snow outside had thickened, piling high against the door, and for a moment she felt as if the world itself were holding its breath. As she fastened the last latch, she thought she saw a shadow move just beyond the edge of the forest. Her pulse quickened. "Probably just a deer," she murmured to herself, but her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. She returned to the hearth, trying to focus on her mother's breathing, on the simple rhythm of the fire. Yet the sense of being watched persisted. It was not fear, exactly. It was a strange pull, like the world itself was trying to draw her out into the cold, to cross the threshold of something ancient and powerful. Ilara sank onto the floor in front of the fire, hugging her knees. The room was warm, but her thoughts carried her far away, to places she had never been, to stories she had only heard whispered by the villagers about the forest and the kings who ruled in shadowed realms beyond the mountains. Tales of power and curses, of ancient bargains made under moonlight. She had always dismissed them as old legends, but tonight they seemed almost possible, as real as the snow piling against her window. Her mother stirred, coughing softly, and Ilara leaned over to smooth her hair back from her pale forehead. "I wish I could keep you safe," she whispered, more to herself than to her mother. "I wish I could keep everything safe." A sudden gust of wind burst through the chimney, rattling the beams and extinguishing the candle on the table. The fire flared and then settled, as if the room were breathing. Ilara froze, heart pounding. The shadow outside the window had not moved, yet she knew it was there. Watching, waiting. Instinctively she whispered into the empty room, I wish for someone to protect us, for someone strong and kind." The words left her lips, trembling, almost shameful in their need. Yet even as she spoke them, a strange warmth filled the air, a presence that was not her mother's, not the fire's. It was alive, patient, and powerful. The night stretched on, long and quiet, the wind whispering around the cottage. Ilara could not sleep. She sat by the window, watching the forest edge, waiting for something she did not understand. The snow continued to fall, covering the world in white, hiding the footprints of things that walked silently through the night. When the first light of morning crept over the horizon, the village was still asleep under its blanket of snow. Ilara rose from her chair, weary but unable to rest, and moved to open the door. She thought she might glimpse the sunrise, perhaps a bird, anything to reassure her that the world was ordinary. But when she pushed open the door, the ordinary world had vanished. Standing in the snow, where only minutes before there had been silence, was a figure that seemed to belong neither to the village nor to the forest. A man, tall beyond measure, clad in dark armor that gleamed like black glass. His eyes were golden, molten, and piercing, and his presence radiated both command and danger. The air seemed to bend around him, cold and electric. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. She had seen kings in stories, powerful men who ruled with iron and fire, but this was more than a story. This was living power, drawn into human form and yet more than human. He said nothing at first, only watched her with a steady gaze. Then in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, he spoke 3 words that would change her life forever. "You summoned me." Ilara froze, unsure whether to step back or forward. The wind seemed to hold its breath, the snowflakes pausing midair as if the world itself waited for her answer. Her heart raced, fear and awe tangled in a single, impossible knot. I didn't mean," she began, her voice trembling. But the figure did not move, did not blink. His gaze held her, unwavering, demanding understanding beyond words. Something deep within her stirred, a recognition she could not name, a pull toward him stronger than fear. The Alpha King stood there, silent and immense, as if he had been waiting for this very moment across countless nights and endless years. And for the first time, Ilara understood that her life, her ordinary, quiet life, was about to change forever. She looked at him, heart pounding, and felt the weight of destiny pressing against her chest. The snow swirled around them, blinding and beautiful, a curtain of white that separated the past from what was to come. And in that moment she realized, the night was only beginning. The snow crunched under Kaelin's boots as he stepped closer, the golden light of his eyes fixed steadily on Ilara. She froze, her hands gripping the doorframe. The Alpha King was more than any story she had ever heard, tall, commanding, Yet there was something almost sorrowful in the set of his jaw, something that hinted at loneliness hidden behind strength. I didn't summon you, Alara whispered, her voice trembling. It was only a wish, I didn't think. Kalen's lips curved into a faint smile, almost imperceptible like a shadow passing over stone. Wishes are powerful, he said softly, sometimes stronger than you realize. Alara's heart raced. She had grown up on tales of kings and warriors, but none had ever seemed real. Now, standing before one, she felt the strange pull of awe and fear. Her life, small, careful, ordinary, suddenly felt like a thread in a tapestry woven with power far beyond her understanding. Kalen's gaze softened slightly. I am Kalen, he said, Alpha King of the Shadowed Realm, and you, Alara, have called me here. For that you owe me answers. Alara swallowed hard. I didn't know what I was doing. I only wanted someone to protect my mother and me. Her words faltered, but she met his gaze as best she could. Kalen studied her, his golden eyes unyielding. Then, with a swift movement, he extended a hand. Then come with me. You must learn why your blood has drawn me. Alara hesitated. She had lived her entire life fearing the forest, the unknown. Yet something in Kalen's presence stirred a curiosity she could not resist. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. His touch was cool, yet firm, anchoring her in a way that made the world feel both larger and smaller all at once. The wind swirled around them, carrying with it the scent of snow and frost, and then, without warning, Kalen stepped forward, and the world shifted. In an instant, the cottage, the village, the familiar fields all disappeared. They were standing in a place that seemed made of night and frost. Towers of black stone stretched toward the sky, glinting with ice like knives. Shadows moved on their own, curling and twisting as if alive. The air thrummed with power, a vibration that ran through Alara's chest. This is your realm, she whispered. Kalen's expression was unreadable. My domain stretches far beyond what your eyes can see. You were born with a gift, Alara, a bloodline older than this village, older than the kings who walk the lands of men. And with that gift comes a promise, one that has bound me to you even before you spoke a word. Alara's heart pounded. A promise. Yes, Kalen said, his voice like the roll of distant thunder. Long ago, our bloodlines were connected. Whoever nourishes the final meal of the year with their own strength calls me to them. It is a binding, not of chains, but of destiny. She shook her head, trying to grasp what he meant. I don't understand. I didn't do anything. You wished, Kalen interrupted gently but firmly. And your blood answered. That is enough. Alara stared at him, awe and fear colliding in her chest. The man before her was both terrifying and magnificent, a being whose power seemed to bend the very air. And yet, there was a loneliness in him that called to her own. She thought of her mother, weak and sick, and the life she had led quietly, caring for others. And now, in the snow and shadows, she felt a connection she could not name, pulling her closer to this king she barely knew. Why me? She asked finally. Why my blood? Kalen's golden eyes softened just slightly. Because your heart is strong, he said, and it is kind. Strength without kindness is dangerous. Power without control is chaos. You carry both, though you do not yet know it. For a long moment they walked in silence. The towers of black stone rose around them, frost glinting in the dim light like scattered stars. Alara shivered, unsure if it was the cold or the intensity of Kalen's gaze. You fear me, Kalen said, finally breaking the quiet. And you should, but fear is not weakness, it is understanding. It reminds you of the danger and it teaches you to respect it. Alara nodded, though her heart thumped wildly. I don't know what to do, she admitted. Kalen stopped and turned to her. Then learn, I will teach you. You are stronger than you think, Alara. And soon you will understand why your life has been shaped by shadows and snow, by wishes and by longing. Her stomach knotted, both with anticipation and fear. She had never imagined such a world, such a power, or such a responsibility. And yet she could not deny the pull in her chest, the spark that seemed to light her from within whenever Kaelin's eyes held hers. Days passed, or maybe hours. Time seemed to stretch strangely in his realm. Kaelin guided her through the towers and courtyards, showing her the magic that ran through the land, the whispers of power that moved in the frost, the shadows that were not merely absent but alive. Alara learned quickly, driven by a strange mixture of fear and fascination. She discovered that she could feel the pull of energy in the air, sense the rhythm of life and shadow. Under Kaelin's watchful eye, she practiced, faltered, and practiced again, each success a thrill, each failure a lesson. Despite his authority, Kaelin was patient. He did not force her to do anything she was unprepared for. Yet, every glance, every touch, lightly resting on her shoulder to steady her, sent currents of warmth through her that made her heart ache in ways she could not explain. One night, as the aurora-like lights of the realm flickered across the black towers, Kaelin guided her to the edge of a frozen lake. The ice reflected their figures, stretched thin and glowing with an unnatural light. "You have power," he said quietly, "more than you realize. But it is raw, unshaped. You must learn control or it could consume you." Alara shivered. "Control, I don't know if I can." Kaelin crouched slightly to meet her gaze, his golden eyes soft yet commanding. "You can, you already have. Fear is natural, doubt is natural. But you also have courage. That is what makes you ready." Their eyes locked, the distance between them charged with something unspoken. Alara felt a longing she had never known, a need to connect, to trust, to belong. Kaelin's presence was overwhelming, yet comforting, like the heat of a fire in the coldest night. "Why do you stay?" she asked, almost in a whisper. "Why come to me?" Kaelin's expression darkened for a moment. "Because even kings are lonely, Alara. Because even power demands connection. Because even I need someone I can trust." She felt her chest tighten. In the depth of those words, she saw not just power but vulnerability, and it frightened her because it drew her closer, and yet it was safe, strangely, perfectly safe. The bond between them grew in silence, in small gestures, the brush of a hand as he guided her, the tilt of his head as he listened, the moments of quiet shared under the glowing sky. Each moment was loaded with a tension that was both frightening and exhilarating. Then, without warning, a sudden, distant roar echoed across the frozen towers, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Shadows surged from the edges of the forest surrounding the kingdom, twisting and dark. Kaelin's expression hardened instantly, his body moving with the precision of a predator. "They have come," he said. "You must stay here." "No," Alara shouted. Fear and resolve clashed in her chest. "I am not leaving you." Kaelin's eyes softened again, but his voice was firm. "You have power, yes, but not yet enough. You could be in danger." Alara shook her head, heart pounding. "Then teach me. Let me try." Kaelin studied her, the golden light in his eyes flickering like fire. Then finally he nodded. "Very well, but you must listen to every word. One mistake could cost more than you realize." The shadows moved closer, writhing like living smoke. Alara felt the pull of her magic, the rhythm of energy in the air responding to her fear and her determination. Her chest burned with the need to protect not just herself but him, the man who had entered her life and changed it forever. Kaelin stepped back slightly, watching her with intensity. "Focus," he said. "Breathe, feel the world around you. You are stronger than the fear." Alara closed her eyes, heart racing, and let the power flow through her. The shadows recoiled, a faint light flaring from her hands, illuminating the ice and the night. For a moment she felt unstoppable, a spark of destiny burning bright. Kaelin's lips curved into a faint smile, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Well done," he whispered, "but this is only the beginning." The night was far from over. And for the first time, Alara understood the truth of Kaelin's world. Power, danger, and longing were bound together, and she had just stepped into a life she could never return from. And in the silence that followed, the aurora-like lights above the black towers shimmered. as if the world itself had taken note of the bond forming between the human girl and the Alpha King of Shadows. The shadows had been relentless, twisting through the forest surrounding Kalen's domain. Even in the warmth of the towers, their presence pressed against the walls like smoke. Alara stood on the balcony, snow swirling around her, and felt the tension coiling in her chest. "You are restless," Kalen said behind her, his voice low and steady. She turned, startled by how quietly he had appeared. I feel like something is coming," she admitted. "Something I cannot stop." Kalen's eyes, golden and sharp as sunlight on molten metal, softened. "You feel correctly. The shadows do not arrive by chance. They seek to test you, to test us." Alara's stomach tightened. She had never felt fear so vividly before, yet beneath it lay another emotion, equally strong: determination. She wanted to face the darkness, not hide from it. She wanted to prove that she was capable, that she could protect both herself and Kalen, even if it meant stepping into danger. "You must understand your strength," Kalen continued, stepping closer. "Your power is not just in your hands, but in your heart, in your courage. Without control, it is dangerous, but with focus, it can shape the outcome of this world." Alara swallowed, nodding slowly. "Teach me," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I want to learn." Kalen studied her for a long moment, then gestured for her to follow. "Very well. Today you learn control, and the lesson begins now." They moved through the frozen courtyards toward the edge of the realm, where black towers gave way to icy cliffs. Below, the land stretched into shadows, the forest dark and endless. Kalen knelt on the ice, his hand pressing against it, and Alara felt a shiver run down her spine as he spoke. "Magic flows through everything," he explained. "Through the snow, the wind, even through you. To control it, you must first sense it, not just see it, feel it. Understand its rhythm." Alara nodded, closing her eyes. She breathed deeply, trying to calm the fear in her chest, letting her mind open to the energy around her. At first, she felt nothing. Then slowly, a vibration began in her fingertips, a soft hum that pulsed through her veins. The shadows that had been gathering at the edges of the cliffs seemed to recoil slightly, as if acknowledging her presence. Kalen's golden eyes watched her, intense but patient. "Good. Now extend it. Send the energy outward, do not hold it back." Her heart pounded as she opened her palms, and the faint glow from her hands grew brighter. The shadows hissed and twisted, retreating into the darkness as if afraid. For the first time, Alara felt the exhilaration of power, not frightening but alive, electric, and real. Kalen's voice broke the silence. "Well done, Alara. That is only the beginning. You must train every day, push yourself further. The shadows will not forgive weakness." Alara looked at him, a mixture of pride and fear in her eyes. I think I can do it," she whispered. "But what happens if I fail?" Kalen's expression darkened. "Then the shadows will take what is weak. But you are not weak. You are stronger than you believe. That is why I came to you. That is why you called me." Days turned into nights, and nights into long, cold lessons. Kalen pushed her, guiding her through exercises in control and focus. Alara stumbled often, but each time she rose, stronger, more certain. Slowly her magic began to bend to her will, no longer a raw force but a tool she could shape. Through it all, the tension between them grew. It was not spoken, but it was there. In the brush of hands, in the quiet moments when their eyes met, in the shared silences that spoke louder than words. Alara felt a strange longing she had never known, a need to be close, to trust, to be understood. Kalen, in turn, revealed glimpses of vulnerability, rare and fleeting, beneath his stern, commanding presence. One night, as the northern lights shimmered across the frozen towers, Kalen led her to the top of the highest spire. The wind whipped around them, cold and sharp, carrying the scent of snow and frost. "You have grown stronger," he said, his voice soft, almost gentle. "Stronger than I expected." Alara's heart fluttered. I feel it. I feel the magic, the power, but it scares me sometimes." Kalen's gaze held hers. Fear is natural. It does not make you weak. It reminds you that you are alive, that your choices matter. They stood close, the wind tugging at their cloaks, the lights of the aurora dancing above. For a moment the world seemed to pause, as if it too were watching them. Alara felt a pull toward him, a desire she did not fully understand but could not resist. "Kalen," she began, her voice barely audible over the wind. He looked at her, golden eyes unreadable. "Yes. I want to help. I want to fight beside you, not behind you." Kalen's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Then you shall, but understand this, our enemies are not weak. They will test you and they will not show mercy." Before she could respond, a sudden roar shattered the night. Shadows surged from the forest below, twisting and writhing like living smoke. The creatures moved with unnatural speed, their forms dark and frightening, yet indistinct. Alara's heart raced, fear and determination clashing within her. "Kalen, what are they?" "Shadows born of darkness," he said, his voice steady. "They seek to destroy what is light. They test those who grow strong, and tonight they test us." Kalen moved with fluid precision, drawing a blade that seemed forged from night itself. Alara felt the pull of her own magic, a spark igniting in her hands, ready to defend. "You must focus," Kalen said. "Use your power, but do not let it control you." Alara closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The shadows moved closer, swirling around the base of the spire, reaching for them with tendrils of darkness. She felt the rhythm of the magic in her veins, the pulse of the wind, the heartbeat of the ice beneath her feet. Slowly she extended her hands, letting the energy flow outward. A bright, soft light spread from her palms, pushing the shadows back, forcing them to recoil. Kalen's eyes flicked to hers, a mix of pride and caution. "Good, but there is more. You must stand your ground. You must hold the light even when it burns." The shadows surged again, faster, stronger, and Alara felt the strain. Her arms trembled, her breath coming in sharp gasps, yet she held the glow steady. Kalen moved beside her, his blade cutting through the dark, protecting her from the most dangerous strikes, yet never taking over her fight. "You are doing well," he said. "Do not let fear dominate you." Alara's heart soared, even as exhaustion threatened to drag her down. She felt a strange exhilaration, power, danger, and something else intertwined. She realized then that she was not just fighting shadows. She was discovering herself, discovering the strength she had carried all along, waiting for the moment to awaken. After what felt like hours, the shadows finally began to retreat, pulling back into the forest from which they had come. The aurora-like lights above the spire shimmered, reflecting off the ice, painting the night in colors both fierce and gentle. Alara sank to her knees, trembling, exhausted but alive. Kalen knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "You did well," he said, his golden eyes softening. "Far better than I could have hoped." Alara looked up at him, a mixture of awe and something more, something unspoken, charged, electric. I couldn't have done it without you." Kalen's expression darkened for a moment, and she sensed the weight he carried, the loneliness he had hinted at before. "No," he said finally, "you did it alone. I only guided you. This is your strength, Alara, remember it." The wind howled around them, but it no longer felt threatening. Instead, it seemed to carry approval, as if the world itself recognized her courage. As they returned to the towers, the bond between them had deepened, solidified in shared struggle and understanding. Yet, even as they walked, Alara could feel a new tension rising, a quiet, ominous warning that their trials were far from over. "Tonight was only the beginning," Kalen said quietly, almost to himself. "The darkness will return, stronger, sharper, and it will seek to test both of you again." Alara's heart tightened, but she nodded. "Then we will face it together." Kalen's eyes met hers, golden and intense, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, without another word, they stepped into the warmth of the towers, the night behind them and the unknown stretching ahead. But the shadows were not gone. and in the quiet of the darkened realm, a whisper of danger stirred once more, promising that their courage, their power, and their bond would be tested again, and that the night still held secrets neither of them could yet imagine. The frozen forest outside Kaelin's realm stirred, with restless shadows, the wind carrying whispers of danger that had not yet passed. Elara stood at the edge of the highest tower, the snow swirling around her, her breath forming clouds that vanished into the cold. Her hands still glowed faintly from the magic she had wielded, her body exhausted but alive. Kaelin stepped beside her, silent as always, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. For a moment neither spoke, the wind carrying only the sound of their shared breathing and the distant creaking of ice. "You have grown stronger than I expected," Kaelin said finally, his voice low but warm. "Stronger than anyone could have imagined." Elara turned to him, feeling the weight of his words. I still feel afraid," she admitted. "But it is different now. I feel like I can face whatever comes." Kaelin's expression softened just slightly, and he reached out, brushing a hand against hers. The warmth of his touch carried a quiet reassurance, a promise. "Fear is natural," he said. "But courage is not the absence of fear, it is standing despite it. You have learned that." Their moment of calm shattered suddenly. A rumble echoed through the forest, the shadows moving faster, sharper, and more purposeful than before. Elara's heart pounded. The darkness had returned, stronger, more dangerous. "They are coming," Kaelin said, his voice steady but alert. "And this time they will not wait for mistakes." Elara nodded, gripping her hands to steady the magic flowing within her. "Then we fight," she said, determination shining through her fear. The first wave of shadows surged from the forest, twisting forms of darkness that moved like living smoke. Their eyes glowed faintly, hungry and relentless. Kaelin drew his blade, its edge gleaming like black glass, and moved with fluid precision, cutting through the shadows as they reached the tower's base. Elara's magic flared, a soft light that pushed against the darkness, creating a circle of protection around them. She felt the rhythm of her power, the pulse of the wind, the heartbeat of the ice beneath her feet. For the first time, she realized that her strength was not just in her hands, but in her heart, in her will, in her courage to stand beside Kaelin. The battle raged, shadows twisting and hissing, striking with sharp tendrils that sought to overwhelm them. Kaelin fought with skill and precision, yet he never took over Elara's fight. He guided her, encouraged her, letting her face the darkness, teaching her to trust her own power. "You are ready," he said during a brief lull, his golden eyes meeting hers. "Now unleash everything, do not hold back." Elara took a deep breath, focusing on the flow of magic around her. The glow in her hands intensified, radiating outward, cutting through the shadows with brilliant, pure light. The creatures shrieked and recoiled, retreating from the force of her energy. She felt exhaustion press against her body, but she did not falter. Kaelin moved beside her, his blade a streak of black and gold, protecting her from the most dangerous attacks, yet allowing her to shine, to hold her own. Their movements were in perfect harmony, a dance of light and shadow, of strength and trust. Finally, with a surge of energy that pulsed through her, Elara sent a final wave of light across the battlefield. The shadows screamed, twisting and writhing, and then, one by one, they dissipated, melting into the darkness from which they had come. The wind stilled, leaving only the sound of their breathing and the quiet hum of the frozen realm. Elara sank to her knees, trembling, exhausted but triumphant. Kaelin knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You faced the darkness and held your light. That is strength." She looked up at him, awe and gratitude mingling in her chest. "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. Kaelin shook his head. "No, you did it alone. I only guided you. This power, this courage, it is yours. Remember that always." For a long moment they sat together, the cold wind swirling around them, but no shadow dared approach. Elara felt a new confidence within her, a knowledge that she was capable, that she could face the challenges ahead. And she also felt something else, a connection to Kaelin, unspoken yet undeniable, a bond forged in fire and ice, in trust and courage. The aurora like lights above the towers shimmered, painting the night in colors both fierce and gentle. Alara stood slowly, brushing the snow from her cloak. She looked at Kaelin, who remained silent, his gaze thoughtful. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Kaelin's eyes met hers, golden and intense. "Now you learn to live with your strength, to shape it, to use it wisely. The shadows will return as they always do, but you are no longer afraid. That is what makes you dangerous to them." Alara nodded. She had grown, not just in power but in understanding. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, and emerged stronger. She knew that her life would never be ordinary again, but she was ready to face whatever came, with Kaelin by her side. Days passed, and the frozen realm began to thaw, the snow melting slowly under the pale sunlight. Alara continued to train, guided by Kaelin, her confidence growing with each lesson. The bond between them deepened, no longer only one of teacher and student, but of trust, of understanding, of quiet affection. One evening, as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Kaelin led Alara to the highest spire once more. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of thawing snow and fresh pine. "You have done well," he said, his voice soft. "Stronger, wiser, and braver than I ever expected." Alara smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. I feel like I understand now, not just the power but why it matters, why I was chosen." Kaelin's eyes softened. "You were chosen because you are strong, because your heart is kind, and because you have the courage to face what others would flee." For a long moment they stood side by side, the wind tugging at their cloaks, the world below quiet and still. Alara felt a sense of peace she had never known, a balance between strength and vulnerability, between fear and courage. "Kaelin," she began, her voice barely audible. He looked at her, golden eyes steady. "Yes, I think I understand now," she said. "Not just the magic, but you. I understand your loneliness, your strength, and your heart, and I feel like I belong here with you." Kaelin's expression softened further, almost tenderly. "And I feel the same, Alara. You have given me something I did not know I was missing. Courage, trust, and the bond that makes me human again." The wind swirled around them, carrying the scent of snow and thawing ice, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. The darkness that had once threatened them was gone, at least for now, leaving only light, hope, and the quiet power of what they had faced together. As they descended the tower and returned to the warmth of the castle, the villagers who had been brought to safety looked on in awe. Alara's courage and power had saved them, and Kaelin's leadership had guided her. Together, they had forged a bond that no shadow could break. In the quiet of the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kaelin and Alara stood on the balcony, watching the world bathed in golden light. The snow had melted, revealing the vibrant life beneath, the promise of a future shaped by courage, love, and trust. "Do you think the shadows will ever return?" Alara asked softly. Kaelin's golden eyes held hers, steady and certain. "Perhaps, but we will be ready together." Alara smiled, feeling a sense of peace and purpose she had never known. She had faced fear, embraced her power, and discovered the bond that had been waiting for her all along. And now, she knew that no matter what the future held, she would not face it alone. As the night settled, the aurora-like lights shimmered above the towers, a reminder of the magic, the struggle, and the triumph. The darkness had tested them, the shadows had challenged them, but they had endured. And in doing so, they had found something stronger than fear, stronger than power, stronger than the night itself. And in that quiet, golden moment, with the wind carrying the promise of new beginnings, Alara realized that she was no longer the girl who had shared a simple Christmas Eve meal. She was a warrior, a guardian, and something more, bonded to an alpha king, part of a story larger than herself, a story that would continue in courage, in love, and in hope. The world outside their towers was vast, filled with mysteries and dangers, but for the first time, Alara felt ready. Together, she and Kaelin could face whatever came, their bond unbroken, their hearts aligned, their destinies intertwined. And as the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, glimmering like silver sparks over the thawed land, a quiet sense of triumph settled over them. The night had been conquered, the darkness had been faced, and the dawn was theirs to embrace. For Alara and Kaelin, the Alpha King and the girl who had shared her final meal, the story was only just beginning, bathed in light, forged in courage, and alive with the promise of all that was yet to come.